If your Social Security deposit landed in your account this month and it was smaller than last month, I want you to take a breath before you assume the worst. There's almost always a specific, identifiable reason behind it, and in this video, I'm going to walk you through the real list of reasons this happens, so you can figure out exactly which one applies to you, usually within just a few minutes. This is one of the most common questions I hear from people watching this channel, and I understand why. When a fixed income is the thing covering your rent, your groceries, and your medication, even a small unexpected drop can feel like a genuine emergency. The uncertainty of not knowing why often feels worse than the actual dollar amount involved. My goal today is to take away that uncertainty entirely by giving you a complete, specific list to check yourself against. I also want to connect some dots for you today. If you've watched other videos on this channel, you've already heard about a few of these reasons in detail. Today I'm pulling everything together into one place, so you have a single checklist to run through the next time a check looks different than you expected. If you're not subscribed yet, take a moment and do that now, and turn on the bell. Social Security checks change for real. Identifiable reasons more often than people realize, and almost nobody walks through the full list in one place. That's what this channel is for. Subscribe, and let's get into it. Before we get into the actual list, I want to start with something reassuring, because I know a smaller check can feel alarming, especially with everything going around right now about scams targeting retirees. Here's a fact worth holding on to. Private debt, things like credit card bills, medical bills, personal loans, or car loans, cannot touch your Social Security benefit. Period. Federal law protects your benefit from this kind of debt collection entirely. If anyone ever calls or writes to you claiming they're taking money from your Social Security check over a credit card bill or a medical bill, that claim itself is a sign you're dealing with a scam, not a legitimate collection action. I covered the broader topic of spotting fake government letters in another video on this channel, and this is exactly the kind of detail that check applies to. So if private debt isn't the answer, what actually causes a real reduction? Let's go through the legitimate reasons one at a time. The first, and by far the most common reason, is a change in your Medicare Part B premium. For most people, this premium gets deducted directly from your Social Security check automatically before the remaining amount ever reaches your bank account. This premium can increase from one year to the next, and when it does, your check goes down by exactly that amount, even though your actual Social Security benefit technically went up because of your annual cost of living adjustment. Here's a simple way to picture it. Say your benefit increased by $60 a month due to your annual raise, but your Part B premium increased by $15 that same year. Your check would still go up overall by about $45. But if you were only paying attention to the COLA percentage you heard about in the news, the actual deposit landing in your account could feel smaller than expected, simply because two separate adjustments happened at the same time, in opposite directions. I've covered this specific overlap in detail in another video on this channel, including how a raise and a premium increase can interact in ways that genuinely confuse people. If your check changed right around January, this is the very first thing to check. The second reason is an overpayment recovery. If Social Security previously paid you more than you were technically entitled to, for any reason, even one that wasn't your fault, they have the legal authority to withhold part of your future checks to recover that amount. I did an entire video on this specific topic, including the exact forms you can file if you believe the overpayment is wrong, or if repaying it would cause genuine financial hardship. If you've received a letter mentioning the word overpayment anytime in the recent past, this is very likely connected to a smaller check now. The third reason applies specifically if you're under your full retirement age and still working while collecting benefits. There's an earnings limit, and if your income goes above it, Social Security temporarily withholds part of your benefit. I covered the exact dollar thresholds and the math behind this in another video, including the part most people don't realize, that withheld amounts eventually get credited back to you through a higher ongoing payment once you reach full retirement age. This one tends to catch people specifically around tax season or right after picking up seasonal or part-time work, since that's when income tends to shift the most. If you've picked up more work hours or income recently, this is worth checking. Now let's get into a few reasons I haven't covered elsewhere on this channel yet, because these matter too, even though they affect a smaller number of people. The fourth reason is a federal tax debt. If you owe back taxes to the IRS, federal law allows the IRS to levy up to 15% of your monthly Social Security benefit, continuing until the debt is paid off. This happens through something called the Federal Payment Levy Program. And unlike some other types of debt collection, there's no minimum amount they're required to leave you with under this specific provision. Let me make that concrete. If your monthly benefit is $2,000, a 15% levy would reduce that by $300 a month, continuing every single month until the underlying tax debt is fully paid off, not just for a set number of months. If you know you have an outstanding federal tax balance, this is worth checking directly with the IRS, since they're required to send multiple notices before this kind of levy actually begins. The fifth reason is a defaulted federal student loan. The government can also withhold up to 15% of your Social Security benefit to collect on defaulted federal student loan debt. Although here, there is a protection in place. Your remaining benefit generally cannot be reduced below $750 a month under this specific type of garnishment. I do want to flag something important and current here. Student loan garnishment through Social Security has been paused since the early days of the pandemic, and as of the most recent extension, that pause continues through July 1st, 2026. So if this applies to your situation, it's less likely to be the cause of a smaller check right now, though that could change once the pause eventually ends. If you do have older federal student loan debt that went into default years ago, this is worth keeping on your radar, even though it isn't actively affecting checks during this paused period, since regular collection efforts on these loans have already resumed in other forms, even while this specific garnishment mechanism remains on hold. The sixth reason is the one with the largest potential impact, and it's court-ordered child support or alimony. Unlike the federal debts I just described, there's no 15% cap here, and importantly, there's no $750 floor protecting your remaining benefit either. Depending on your specific circumstances, federal law allows between 50 and 65% of your Social Security benefit to be withheld for child support or alimony obligations, with the higher end of that range applying if payments are significantly behind. To put that in perspective, on that same $2,000 monthly benefit, 65% withheld would mean $1,300 gone every month, leaving just $700 to live on, with no legal floor preventing it from going that low. This is enforced directly by courts and state agencies, and if this applies to your situation, any questions about the amount or the underlying order need to go through that court or agency, not Social Security itself, since Social Security is simply complying with a legal order it's required to follow. The seventh reason is one that's actually self-inflicted, in a good way, meaning it's something you have direct control over and can change immediately if needed. You're allowed to voluntarily request that Social Security withhold federal income tax from your monthly benefit, similar to how taxes get withheld from a paycheck. If you set this up at some point, or if you requested a change to the percentage being withheld, that adjustment will show up as a smaller check, even though nothing went wrong. If your check changed and you genuinely can't connect it to any of the other 6 reasons, it's worth checking whether a voluntary withholding election is the explanation, since this is something you can adjust or cancel directly. I want to mention one more detail that doesn't reduce your benefit amount, but is worth knowing about for peace of mind. If your Social Security benefit is direct deposited into a bank account, federal law requires your bank to automatically protect up to 2 months' worth of those benefits from being frozen or seized by most creditors, even in cases where a creditor has gotten a court order against your bank account for an unrelated debt. This is a separate protection from everything we've discussed about the benefit itself, but it adds another layer of security specifically for money that's already landed in your account. Let me clear up two more questions I hear often. Does any of this apply to supplemental security income, often called SSI? No. SSI is structured differently from regular Social Security retirement and disability benefits, and it cannot be garnished for any of the reasons I've described today, including federal tax debt, defaulted student loans, or even child support and alimony. If you specifically receive SSI rather than retirement or disability benefits, this entire list of garnishment reasons simply doesn't apply to you. And what happens if a child support or alimony order changes? Say a court reduces the amount you owe. Social Security generally doesn't make that adjustment on its own. They're required to wait for the court to send an updated order directly, and they don't apply retroactive adjustments for the time before that updated order arrives. If your situation has changed and you believe the withholding amount should be different now, the fastest path is going back to the court that issued the original order rather than contacting Social Security first. So here's what I want you to actually do, step by step, to figure out which of these applies to you. First, log into your My Social Security account at ssa.gov and look for any official notices or letters tied to your account. Many of these changes come with a notice explaining exactly what changed and why, even if you didn't open or fully read it at the time. This single step resolves the mystery for a large share of people, simply because the explanation was sitting there the whole time, unread. Second, compare your Medicare Part B premium for this year against last year. This is the most common cause by a wide margin, and it's also the easiest to confirm, since the premium amount is published and consistent for almost everyone in a given year. A quick search for this year's standard Part B premium compared against what you remember paying last year often answers the question in under a minute. Third, think back over the past several months. Did you receive any letter mentioning an overpayment? Did your work income change recently while you're collecting early benefits? Did you set up or change a voluntary tax withholding election? These three questions cover a large share of the remaining common causes, and answering them honestly, even from memory, usually points you toward the right category before you need to make a single phone call. Fourth, if none of the above seem to apply, consider whether you have any outstanding federal tax debt, a defaulted federal loan, or a court order related to child support or alimony. These affect fewer people, but they're worth ruling out directly by contacting the IRS, the Department of Education, or the relevant court rather than guessing. If one of these does apply to you, that agency, not Social Security, will have the specific details about the amount and the timeline. Fifth, if you genuinely cannot identify a reason after going through this entire list, call Social Security directly at 1-800-772-1213 and ask them specifically what changed on your account and why. Having gone through this checklist first means you'll be asking a much more targeted question than simply saying your check seems wrong, which tends to get you a faster, more specific answer. Here's the honest, full picture, one more time. A smaller Social Security check almost always has a specific, identifiable cause: a Medicare premium change, an overpayment recovery, earnings test withholding, a federal tax debt, a paused but eventually resuming student loan garnishment, a child support or alimony order, or a voluntary tax withholding election you set up yourself. What it is not, under any circumstances, is private debt like a credit card or medical bill reaching into your benefit. Running through this list takes a few minutes and turns a confusing, alarming moment into a specific, answerable question. I think the most valuable thing you can take from this video isn't any single reason on the list. It's the habit of checking calmly rather than assuming the worst, or assuming nothing at all. A fixed income deserves that kind of attention, precisely because there's so little room to absorb a surprise you don't understand. If you know someone who's mentioned a smaller check recently and seemed unsure why, send them this video. Most of the time, the answer is sitting in one of these 7 categories, and knowing which one removes a lot of unnecessary worry. That's what this channel is here for. I'll see you in the next one.